USPAP, page 198. Ethics rule, conduct continued. I have performed a general contracting service and a brokerage service regarding the subject property. I have provided no other services as an appraiser or in any other capacity regarding the property that is the subject of this report within the 3-year period immediately preceding acceptance of this assignment. Number 22, disclosing prior services provided by my company. Question: is the firm that employs me as an appraiser has provided leasing or property management services in the past 3 years for the subject property? Must this be disclosed? Response: not necessarily. The ethics rule requires disclosure of services provided by the appraiser. However, if an appraiser believes that the provision of a service by the appraiser's firm or other related entity may be relevant, he or she should disclose that information to a potential client. Number 23, disclosing prospective interest in a property. Question: if I will be conducting an auction of the subject property after the appraisal, does this have to be disclosed? Response: yes. This is an example of a current or prospective interest in the subject property. USPAP requires that such an interest be disclosed in the certification and prior to acceptance of an assignment or upon discovery during the assignment. Number 24, disclosing prior services on pre-printed form reports. Question: most of my assignments are completed using common residential appraisal report forms. I am concerned that my clients do not allow changes to the certification on the report forms. The conduct section of the ethics rule requires that I disclose prior to accepting the assignment and in the report certification whether prior services were performed regarding the subject property. Does this mean that I will not be allowed to appraise a property for these clients if I have performed a service regarding that property in the previous 3 years? Response: USPAP compliance is the appraiser's responsibility, while deletion or modification of client-imposed certifications may not always be allowed. Most clients allow additional certifications that do not constitute material alterations to the appraisal report. It is not uncommon for appraisers to add supplemental certifications, and this will be necessary unless and until such forms are revised to comply with the requirements of Standards Rule 2-3. Number 25. Does a request for a final inspection require disclosure of prior services? Question: if I performed an appraisal that was subject to completion of repairs and subsequently received a request to perform a final inspection confirming that the work had been completed, am I required to disclose that I previously appraised the property even if it is obvious to the client that I've done so? Response: a final inspection is not an extension of the original assignment unless it is part of the original agreement for services. A subsequent request would be a new assignment and as such requires disclosure in accordance with the conduct section of the ethics rule. This holds true even if it may be obvious to the client that you've already previously performed an appraisal on the property. Number 26. Does utilizing a property as a comparable sale require disclosure of prior services? Question: if I perform an appraisal and use a property as one of my comparable sales and later receive, page 199, a request to appraise the property that was used as a comparable sale, must I disclose I performed a service on that property because I used it as a comparable sale? Response: no. Using a property as a comparable sale in an appraisal does not constitute performing a service regarding that property. Therefore, a subsequent request to appraise the comparable sale would not require disclosure under the conduct section of the ethics rule. Number 27. Format for disclosing prior services at the time of the assignment. Question: may the appraiser make an oral disclosure to the client of prior services performed on the property prior to accepting an assignment? May it be made in an email to the client? Response: USPAP does not specify how the disclosure upon acceptance or discovery must be made. It may be appropriate in some cases to provide an initial oral disclosure. If the client decides to proceed, it may be appropriate that the appraiser's disclosure be restated in writing. One way to accomplish this is by including it in a letter of engagement. In other cases, an email would be appropriate. The record-keeping rule requires that the appraiser's work file include all data, information, and documentation necessary to show compliance with USPAP. So the disclosure prior to acceptance or upon discovery must be documented in the appraiser's work file. Number 28. Value opinions that equal contract prices. Question: I know appraisers who consistently conclude that the market value of any property they appraise is equal to the contract sale price. In doing so, they facilitate sales and financing of sales, which is apparently what keeps their clients happy. Is this a violation of USPAP? Response: a contract sale price can be a good indicator of a property's market value, and it may be logical and reasonable for the appraiser to conclude that they are the same. However, this